infinite complaisance, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
On this edition of Into the Fray, I welcome Jason to the show. And Jason, you say you've had essentially the trifecta of anomalous experiences. You've had ghost, UFO, and cryptid. And the cryptid encounter you actually shared for the call-in episode that was 300. But of course, I would like you to tell that again, since now you and I have the opportunity to discuss that. But welcome on, Jason.
Thanks for having me on, and yeah, I'm happy to share that experience again. And yeah, my childhood trifecta with the paranormal. Yeah, I guess I'll just start with a little backstory. Try not to age you, but I think we're kind of in the same age group. Like growing up and as a kid in the 80s and 90s, the backside of the satanic panic and all that stuff. And the paranormal was out there, but there wasn't really any outlet for us. Maybe I remember as a kid always going to the school library, and there was this big Reader Digest book of the paranormal. I don't know if you've ever seen that when you were in school, but yeah, I've always used to check that out and read everything that's in it. The UFOs, Bigfoot stories, and stuff like that. And me and my friends, we would always talk about that stuff. And we dabbled with the Ouija board and stuff like that, which the Ouija board comes into play with one of my encounters. But we just do what kids do back in the day. And yeah, we don't have, they didn't have all those shows that are out now that there was out back then. Maybe just Unsolved Mysteries was the only show, and maybe reruns of In Search of. Yeah, the first thing that happened was the Ouija board incident. I just like to say real quick that this isn't like a bad Ouija board incident. I know a lot of people that come on the show, say stuff like, oh my God, Ouija board's bad and this and stuff. But this was actually, I guess, it was a positive experience. And, so I guess I have a different, way of thinking of how the Ouija board would work. I think a lot of it's like the intent you bring in with it is what you get out of it. So if you go in there with the mindset like I'm just gonna mess around with it, it's gonna mess around with you back. It was me, about 3 other friends. We were at another friend's house, and we were just hanging out. I think it was a Saturday because we didn't have school. Just hanging out and stuff, and kind of wondering what to do. And my friend there who lived there said, "Hey, you want to let's play with my Ouija board." I'm like, okay, sounds sounds fun. So he didn't have like one of the Parker Brothers game board ones. It was actually one that he made himself. Yeah, he put it out, and we started asking questions and kind of getting a lot of gibberish type answers and stuff. So thought to myself, like, you know what? I think I'll just I stood up, so I wasn't using the planchette. My friends were, and I was the one who started asking questions, and that's when we started getting like, I guess, responses from it that actually made any sense. And I just asked it, is there anybody here that knows who I am? It went to yes. And I'm like, okay. The thing that popped in my head was maybe this might be my grandmother on my father's side, because she recently passed away about a year or so before. So I just thought, okay, maybe. And I asked, hey, is this my grandmother? And yeah, the planchette went to yes. I'm like, okay. So I don't know if it was my friends just joking around or whatnot. So I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that this is who I'm talking to, and it's not my friends messing around, or if we are talking to somebody that might be playing games with us. So I asked, okay, if this is my grandmother, what was your nickname that the family had for you? And there's no way that my friends would know what my grandmother's nickname was within the family. I don't think they even knew my grandmother even passed away. So I asked that question, and the response, it went to M, then A, and C, Mac. That was her nickname. That's the nickname the family had for her. And she used to make a lot of potteries and stuff like that, and that's how she signed. When she made her pottery, underneath was always Mac, MAC. I was surprised. I'm like, oh, I'm like, hi, Grandma. I'm glad you're here. And I just asked, like, if this is really you, is there anything you can do to show us that it's you? We were in my friend's bedroom, and they're on the floor, using the board. I was stood up, watching, and then over to the side, he had a desk, and on that desk he had all this normal like stuff for school and stuff like that for studying and homework. And there was a pencil, and we all looked over, and that pencil levitated onto its end and then fell back down. And when it fell back down, that's my friends freaked out. They all ran out of the room. And I have to say that, like, most of my friends growing up, they were Hispanic, so they were heavy on the Catholic side. And when they saw that, they freaked. They ran out. Like, one friend, he was downstairs rubbing his little crucifix necklace, just praying, like, oh God, we just we just made contact with the ghost. And I'm like, yeah, we just made contact with my grandma.
So, Jason, did you
You
end
don't
up telling your parents about that experience?
Yeah, I've told them a few times, and I mean, it's kind of funny with my grandmother per se, because when she passed away, she wanted to be cremated, and we had her cremated, and believe she wanted her ashes spread, I think somewhere in the Sierra Nevada mountains, because I live in California, Central Valley. What happened was the guy that we hired to spread her ashes, using an airplane, I guess this guy did it with a bunch of other people that had their family members cremated and they wanted their ashes sprinkled. He basically stored all the ashes in a hangar that he rented where he kept his plane, and just collected the money and never took the ashes out.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so I guess he started being investigated, and he basically committed suicide when, I guess, when everything was about to hit the fan. So for about 5 or 6 years, yeah, my grandmother's ashes were stored away in this hangar, but she eventually was able to have her ashes spread over the mountains. So
Gosh, do you know how many
that's just
people he had stored in there?
uh from what I remember, it was quite a few. I have to say, possibly in the hundreds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it was a bit crazy. I mean, and like like my family, we always try to, in a bad situation, see the light side of it. We're like, hey, I mean, grandma was just been waiting for a while. She was just in storage, but but in the end, she had her ashes spread. So I guess that's the important part, that everything sorted itself out. But yeah, that guy, it was a bit crazy at the time.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. That's a special dude right there, willing to go to those lengths to not spend the fuel to do the actual flights, but still collect the money. That's pretty demented. So, just one more question before you go on, because it probably took quite a bit of energy to pick the pencil up and levitate and everything. Was there any other activity around that time? And you probably would have mentioned it, but anything else at your home, friend's home? And do you remember your parents ever saying anything like strange that might be attributed to grandma trying to make contact?
No, not really, because say like the home that I spent the most of my life in, it was a brand new house when we moved in. The only activity that's been out of that house is possibly my father, but that's something I'll share towards the end of the interview, going in chronological order.
Right. Okay.
But other than that, it's just nothing regarding my grandmother. But my friends had stories of things that they've seen, but not particularly at that house that we were at. I had a friend that lived across the street from me that he witnessed. This is kind of freaky. He woke up one night and he had his window open. He had his curtains open. He looked out the window in his bedroom and there was a floating red head looking back at him. He said he stared at that head for a few seconds and the head basically turned and just floated away. And he had no idea what the heck that thing was.
And it was just that one occurrence.
That's just one occurrence that he talked about. But no, but like I said, he's Hispanic. He'd always in the summertime take trips down to Mexico to the city and stuff where his family's from, and they always share ghost stories of like a phantom horse that you can hear walking through the town square and stuff like that, and a lot of interesting stuff, especially because they're heavily religious. That a lot of stories and stuff that have religious tones about the devil and stuff like that. So the second thing would be the UFO that we saw. I just like the prefix. I'm from a town at my hometown is Ripon, California, and this is where we saw the UFO. So this was in the early 90s. I have this probably between 1990 and 1992. Just because the type of UFO we saw, I just like to say that at that time, probably within a hundred, like maybe about 150 square miles from where I lived, there was probably about 5, maybe 6 Air Force / naval air stations. So because what we saw, a lot of people claim that it might be something that the government's made. I'll start with the encounter. Like I said, this was probably between 1990 and 92. It was once again like another Friday evening, Saturday evening, because we didn't have school the next day, so we were out kind of late. It was the summertime too, because I remember it was after 9, but the sun was just setting. It had to be the summertime because wintertime to be night by then. I remember all the time back when I was a kid, nearby a city called Stockton, they have a small city airport, and they had an Air National Guard unit there, and they'd always used to fly Chinooks. So you'd always hear Chinooks flying over near where we live all the time. And I remember me and my friends were outside by my neighbor's house, hanging out by her dad's pickup, just hanging out, talking and stuff. And in the distance, we see this craft slowly approaching, and I first thought it might be like just another Chinook, but then I noticed that okay, there's no sound coming from this thing. Because if you ever heard a Chinook, it's got that boom, 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 boom. You can hear from the giant rotors that the thing has. We all start to look, and as it slowly gets closer to us, we can notice that it's a black triangle. This thing probably had to be about not much more than 2,000 feet, because like we said, we thought it was a Chinook at first, and they usually fly a couple thousand feet off the ground when they usually fly over us. Yeah, sure enough, it was a black triangle, and I'd have to say that this thing was probably the size of a small airliner, because as it slowly flew over us, I can tell that it was because a Chinook's probably about a good 60, 70 feet long, and this thing was almost twice the length as a Chinook. And being a triangle, it's probably about the same length across too. The more we saw of it, like it was jet black. It had the 3 lights on all corners, and I know a lot of people say they have that red light in the center. This one also had the red light, but that red light was doing a figure 8 in the center of the craft. I mean, it slowly flew over us. I mean, we watched it for a good 2-3 minutes until it just went past over my friend's house. Over behind my friend's house is a little apartment building. Once it went over that apartment building, we lost sight of it. Yeah, that thing was huge. Like I said, no sound, no nothing coming from it, and it's just like was just very slowly gliding, very smoothly too. Solid black, couldn't make out any like rivets or anything that I could tell to make me think that this thing was man-made, especially with that red light in the middle doing a figure eight on the underside of that triangle. Because I bring up the Air Force bases because I know a lot of people, was it the TR-3B
Mm-hmm.
that they say the government built, that's basically a nuclear powered black triangle that uses a reactor to create an anti-gravitational field or something like that. I'm a bit of an aviation nut, so like I kind of know a little bit of the history of like the Air Force and stuff trying to use nuclear power to power aircraft, and it's never been really successful. Even today, like I know the stories of the TR-3B. It's been around for. I mean, this encounter I had was, we're pushing 30 years ago. I think even then word was coming around that this thing's built by the government and stuff. So we're looking, this is going to be like at least 40-year-old technology by now. Yet, we're still, we're re-engineering bombers that are going to be flying. By the time they retire, these things are going to be 100 years old. So it's like, why are we keeping 40-year-old technology secret and pushing this old technology? Which makes me believe that this, even black triangles, I think it's something not of this world. Yeah, that's the UFO experience I had with. It was my I know my brother was there, and two other friends. Me and my brother, we talk about it from time to time. Like, hey, you remember that black triangle? He's like, yeah, I remember it.
And what were the reactions with your brother and your friends? What did they say about it?
It was weird because I think a lot of like you hear from a lot of other people. It's like we stopped, we watched it, and we watched it for a good at least 2-3 minutes until we couldn't see it anymore as it drifted over the apartment building. It was like afterwards, oh wow, that was cool. Moving on. It's
Yeah.
like even now thinking back, it was just weird because I live in it's a residential area, a lot of houses around. I can't remember, like there's always cars driving around in the neighborhood, but for at least that 2 or 3 minutes, there was like nobody else around except for us. No cars, no nothing. I can't remember hearing anything. It was just like dead silent, just watching that black triangle just drift over us and head off into the distance.
But you do, in fact, feel like it was something off planet. It was not created here, and it's probably not piloted from anybody around here.
Yeah, no, because I mean, it didn't make any noise, and everything that we fly are air breathers. It needs to suck air and needs to push that air out, and that makes noise. And like I said, this thing was dead silent. There's nothing showing that it had any type of propulsion, no smoke coming out of it, anything like that. So yeah, I think it's definitely something that we haven't made, like nothing that like Bob Lazar had a hand in making or anything like that. So
Yeah, I've heard many times of the three lights on all corners, and then a lot of times there's also something underneath, directly in the middle underneath, right? So I don't recall, though, exactly the description of this light kind of moving in this figure eight situation. So it was just constantly moving, kind of like Kit in Knight Rider, right? How the little zzz, zzz, zzz on the front of the car. So it was just constantly in motion like that.
yeah, and I don't know if it was something that was actual part of the craft itself. The kit light would be, or it was something like just below it,
Mm.
like a
Like a byproduct
like a
of whatever was going on.
just
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I said, it's when that thing's just a jet black object where you can't really see any defining features except for just that triangle shape and the three lights in the corners.
Yeah, we
It's
spoke
almost like looking into a void.
looking into a void. Oh, that's an interesting way to say that.
Yeah, like like they have that paint that's like blacker than black, and it just looks like you could put your hand through it if it's
Mm-hmm.
painted on the wall, something like that. Yeah, that's what it seemed like. It was just like blacker than black, like it's something that maybe it's I don't know, maybe it's like a alien made movable portal. I have no idea.
We spoke to my stepbrother Sean for our very first On the Trail of UFOs, and he had spoken about his encounter other places before, of course, but it was out here on his way out to Area 51, actually, and he saw the exact same type of craft that you just described come right over his car, much further down than even what you described. But the funny thing is he will tell you, and he's actually made a model of this craft that he saw, was the fact that I don't remember if it's all the lights or just the corner lights, but he said he was so close that he said that for a completely silent craft, so large, just like what you're describing, he saw these bulbs and the way that they were built into the craft, and he said it looked like something that he could go buy at the Home Depot. Like, that just always stuck with him. So to him, the craft that he saw was something completely made by us. Now, I don't recall if he thinks that there was some assistance at some point from recovered craft from off planet, all of that, but because you can always mix things like that up, right? It would, depending on who you're talking to, what their experience was, you can go, well, yeah, it's ours, but we didn't get all that tech out of our own brains. Like, it came from somewhere else. So anyway, that it just instantly reminds me of his encounter, but he has a very different assessment of what that was.
I mean, yeah, I could be completely wrong, because that's why I wanted to bring up at the time. I think this was just before there was a lot of budget cuts with the defense, and a lot of these Air Force bases had to close down. But at the time there's Bill Air Force Base, Travis Air Force Base, Mather Air Force Base, Castle Air Force Base, and then I know up in Lemoore is the Naval Air Station. I'm probably forgetting one more, but like that's just in this area of California. There was a lot of Air Force bases around. So I mean, if it was something man-made, I mean, especially Bill Air Force Base, because at the time that's where the U-2s and and when it was in service, the Blackbirds used to fly out of. So
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like your explanation a whole lot. I'd rather it be something completely off planet with goodness knows what or who piloting it. I like that explanation better.
yeah, I mean that's just just my thinking is this is going to be this is like a 40-50-year-old technology. If it was created by man, why wouldn't they be like, oh, this is what we have, we've been flying this for years, this is what we got, okay, this is like the next evolution of flying craft, and so we don't have to use jet engines anymore or have solid or liquid propelled rockets. This stuff's better for the environment. This fuel, oh, we don't have to worry about fuel anymore because this thing flies forever on whatever anti-gravitational element that it uses to power it. It's just that's my way of thinking, that if we've had this technology for so long, I think we would have introduced it a while back.
Yeah, I want it to be aliens going, all right, kick the tires and light the fires. Let's do this. That's certainly what I would prefer, but it doesn't matter what I want. Was that?
I said I prefer it to be aliens. You're like, hey, you guys want
Yeah.
to race? I mean, it's
Yeah. Just let's see what's doing with their stuff and our stuff. I would hazard to say, if that's the case, they are far more advanced than we are, of course, since they can get here in the first place. But yeah.
I mean, even if it's us from the future, I think by now we would have been like, hey, we're here. Here we are. We're from the future. And, you know, you guys, we screwed up. Here's how we fix things. You know.
Yeah, quit being idiots because you're screwing up your planet pretty heftily right now. Oh, before we go to the cryptid encounter, did you? Now I know this is early '90s. Did you see anything in newspaper or any other media at the time?
No, nothing at the time. That's why I kind of want to let my location be known. Ripon, California. So if anybody in the surrounding area, maybe they be like, "Oh crap! Yeah, I remember 30 years ago seeing some strange black thing in the sky." Maybe they can shoot you an email or something if they're listening. So some sort of collaborating email.
Yeah, please do. Shannon at intothefrayradio.com. That way I can forward it to Jason. I know that any information, even as small as you might think it may be or insignificant, it probably isn't. So you also have not then over the years, now that internet and all these other websites and social media outlets, have you ever come across anything from around that time frame similar to your sighting?
Well, nothing that I could find. I haven't really took a deep dive into it, but really, you know, a lot of stuff you hear about, you know, in the early '90s are like the Phoenix Lights and stuff like that. So that kind of takes the bulk of the internet searches. That when you search Black Triangle early '90s, that's what usually comes up.
Right.
One thing I like to add though, is I don't know if it was an earlier show that I was listening of yours or somebody else. Somebody said that they had a possible missing time, that they went to fall asleep and it's basically they closed their eyes and they opened their eyes back up and it was daytime. I'm not sure if it was your show or another one, but around this same time, I'm not saying that it could be, but you know, I thought it was interesting that I've had that same experience about 2 or 3 times when I was growing up around the same time as we saw this black triangle. You know, I just thought it was a strange coincidence because I think at the time we were shooting emails back and forth about doing an interview. You know, I come across this guy saying, you know, "Oh yeah, I saw a UFO," but also he go to lay down to fall asleep, close his eyes, and then it seems like a blink of an eye, opens his eyes, and it's like daylight, like 10 o'clock in the morning. And then, you know, it could just be a deep sleep or could be possible missing time. I'm not sure, but I just like to add that little tidbit. I was going to talk more about it later regarding dreams, but I thought this might be a good time to just shoehorn that in.
Yeah, I wish I slept that well. I don't know if I've ever gone to sleep and then pop, your eyes open and it's just morning like that. So this happened a few times to you?
Yeah, I know twice. It's, you know,
Twice, okay.
at the time, they're like, wow, that, you know, it's that, you know, it's like, that's where I slept good. And I never really thought of it, but until I heard a guy talk about it and he used, you know, regarding possible missing time, I'm like, well, you know, maybe I don't know, but once again, you know, maybe other people something similar that happened to them.
You mentioned a brother. I don't know if that's the only sibling that you have, but have you ever talked to any of your siblings about stuff like that? Waking up, anything weird going on in the home?
Yeah, I just got the one younger brother, and yeah, we talk a lot about stuff that's happened, and like his like personal experience. He's never experienced anything like that, so you know that's why I'm like maybe it's just like really really good sleep, but you never know.
Right. Well, it's worth mentioning at least, right?
Yeah, exactly. The little possible cryptid encounter. Yeah, so this was like I said, this was still early to mid '90s, and I tried to look this one up online because it was during a huge meteor shower that happened. I couldn't get the exact one. I couldn't find the exact name of the meteor shower that happened at that time, but I remember it was my brother once again, and probably the same friends or a lot of the same friends that were there for the UFO encounter. we were out in my front yard at my parents' house late at night because this meteor shower was supposed to happen. And luckily, it was a cloudless night. I don't think it was a full moon because the moon wasn't that bright, so the sky was as dark as it could get in a residential area with, we got some light pollution with street lights and stuff like that. But we were able to see, like, it was a lot of meteors going on. It was a pretty good show, and we were probably watching it for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. I remember for some reason we were all laying down on the grass in my front yard, and I just sat up and I just looked over across the street to the house across from us. And like I said, this is a residential area, so the house across from us is probably less than 100 feet from where we were at in my parents' front yard. I can see this creature, or what looked like a creature, just standing on the roof of the house across the street from us. And I'm looking at it, and I'm first thinking, like, maybe my eyes are playing tricks on me because I've been looking up in the sky for a while, watching the stars. But I'm looking at this thing, and all of a sudden, it takes two giant steps and jumps from the house it was on to the house right next to it, to the left of me. And once I saw that thing jump and land on the house across from it, that's when I just stood up and I just told my friends, "Hey, I'm going to bed." I just noped the heck out of there, and I just went to bed. And my brother and my friends are like, "Well, what's going on?" And I explained to him that I just saw something jump from. It was actually my friend's house that was with us, from your house to your neighbor's house, and they were just like, "Oh, you're just seeing things," and I'm like, "No, no, no, I definitely saw that." So I went into the house and I just went to bed. That was enough for me for the night.
Well, how
And
much can you describe as far as exactly what it looked like?
from what I remember, I couldn't get like flooded. There's no like really good details because this thing was just, it was all black. That's why I first thought, okay, maybe it's my eyes playing tricks on me because, like I said, this is a residential neighborhood. We got a street light between the property line of my parents' house and the next door neighbor. So I'm like, okay, is this is this something, the shadow or something playing tricks on me? But this thing, I have to say, was probably at least, I'd have to say 10, probably about 10 feet tall. It was on two legs, but I think it was also, it was bipedal, but I think it can also be as equally at home on all fours because it was kind of hunched over. Like it can easily get on its front legs too if it needed to. And it had a long tail behind it that was about as long as its body length. So in total, the thing was probably, I have to say, at least 15 feet long, but it had to be at least about 10 feet tall. And it was almost, I want to say, if I have to say what kind of animal it kind of looked like most to me, even though it was just a black mass, I'd have to say maybe panther-like in a way, just with the long tail and just the way it was just hunched over a little bit. But like I said, when it did its two big steps, it was on its hind legs, so it was running on two legs, and it made that leap to the house across from it. I just like to add that it was, I believe, the next night. My whole mom, dad, my brother, they've already gone to sleep. I was still watching late night TV. It was probably 11 o'clock. I don't think it was midnight yet. I'm just there watching TV, and all of a sudden there's just three bangs on the roof of the house. I remember hearing these three bangs, and it was so, something big landed on the house because the window in the living room started to rattle a little bit. And I'm like, okay, what the heck was that? I knew it wasn't anything in the attic that fell because we didn't have anything big enough that would make the whole house rattle. I mean, it didn't wake up my parents and my brother, but I heard those three big bumps, almost like something like landed, in a way that it's like it's two hind legs, like boom, boom, and then maybe one of its front legs, boom, just to keep itself from maybe falling over or something after landing on the roof. And once I heard that, yeah, once again, I just turned off the TV and just walked to my room and okay, yep, it's time for bed.
Do you recall how much space, at least an estimation, would be between each house?
I'd have, yep, a good, that's a good 8 to 10 feet between, yeah. So this thing, when it did its leap, it, because it didn't leap from like the edge of one house to the edge of the other, it was probably about maybe about 6, 7 feet from the ledge of the house it was on. And when it leaped and it landed on the other side of the house, it was a good 6, 7 feet onto the roof of that house. So it probably leapt a good 15, possibly 20 feet.
When you saw it hit the second house and make that leap, what you just described hearing on your house, like I can see that, because if somebody makes that jump, you do have to put that, one more foot forward to stop the forward motion, the propulsion. When it landed on that house, then, and you could see it, did it in fact make that kind of a motion, or could you not discern that from that distance away?
I couldn't really tell because it's like once I made that leap, that's when I stood up and I really didn't really see it land. I just saw how far it went over, and that's when I'm like, yeah, I'm going to bed. I've had that. That's enough for me.
I like that you said I noped on out of there. I like that. That's perfect. So when you're in your house and you hear this sound or sounds, did this creature, whatever the heck it was, did that instantly come to mind?
That's what I'm like, okay, okay, that's and it's like the same thing. It's like the same feeling I had when I saw it outside. It's like, nope, I'm not even gonna deal with this. I'm just gonna go to bed.
So I don't know if you've heard this episode, and I looked it up while you were mentioning this, because I couldn't remember where this occurred, but this actually occurred in California, and that is Into the Fray episode 287 was Beast in the Trees. And it was a particularly terrifying encounter, and it was something that was unseen, but it was leaping tree to tree and making massive trees bend. When this thing would go into the tree and it would land in this tree, the tree would just, he said it would bend as if a friggin' elephant landed in it. So I don't know if you've heard that, or if I would love for you to go through and listen to that and let me know your thoughts on that. But it instantly reminded me of that. But I did not recall on the onset that it was in California. So maybe actually I could, if I can find my notes on that, or if I don't have it in my notes, I could see exactly where in California and just share that with you.
But yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because like I said, I'm not sure if it's a cryptid or something else because, at the time there's a meteor shower going. I don't know what kind of implications that has
Mm-hmm.
for anything in the ether or anything like that. And like even like me hearing 3 big bangs on my parents' house, 3 bangs, a lot of people are like, oh, okay, that's the devil. And and it goes back to a lot of stuff like I said, like the area that I lived in, like I still live in that area now, but back then there was a lot of, I guess, like I said, this is the tail end of the satanic panic, but there's still a lot of like, oh, there's satanic cults around here. They're going to conjure stuff up and, stuff like that. And a lot of it's just a weird time. I think you obviously remember it.
Yeah, those were the days, I got to tell you, when we still rode our bikes everywhere. And it was kind of like we didn't have watches and phones to look at all day. We actually went outside to play until, dark or after. So those were the good old days. Yeah, the timing of the meteor shower is certainly something to note.
Exactly. So I guess, yeah, I don't know if that's just something that adds on. That there's something that's always been there, but this meteor shower which happens every so many 100 years, like, it's this thing's time to shine.
And this was a meteor shower. This wasn't like the comet, like Hale Bopp or anything like that. This was an actual meteor shower with several things going on. Yeah.
Yeah, actual meteors. Yeah, it was. Yeah, okay. Nature was putting on a good show. There were shooting stars all over the place that night.
And it was obviously depositing 10-foot tall black creatures onto people's roofs. How nice.
It's like, surprise.
We're here. I don't blame you, though. Yeah, because... Okay, so with your brother, again, he's present for this. And I know that you noped out of there and you're just like, all right, see ya. That's enough for my brain to try to process. Did you ever bring this up to him and go, hey, did you see anything? Because, like, that's why I went inside. Like, do you remember that? Did you say anything to him about this specific occurrence?
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like, I bring it up and my brother's like, that's the one thing. He's like, yeah, you're crazy. You didn't see anything. I'm like, dude, we saw a freaking UFO together. I mean, just because you didn't see this one doesn't mean it didn't happen. And, like, yeah, I know what I saw in that thing. I'm not one to, if it's fight or flight, I'm not one to just dope on out of there. But at that time, just the feeling I got in my stomach, it was like, nope, 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 nope. I'm not dealing with this tonight.
So I know you said it was hunched over, had a long tail behind it, it was 10 feet tall and all black. Was this thing gangly and thin, or how was it built?
It's sturdy. Like I said, it kind of like reminded me of like a Black Panther.
Oh, so even built like a panther, except that it could run on two legs.
That's why I want to say Black Panther, because the thing was just all black, and I couldn't see any real definition of it, so it looked smooth, kind of like a panther coat on a cat coat.
If you could classify a head shape, what did the head look like?
What I remember, didn't see any like long protruding horns or anything like that. It didn't have a long snout. It probably was like a big cat head with its ears like back, like it's.
So then I guess my mind goes, what if it was a dog man?
That man, I have no idea.
Oh, of course you said it didn't have much of a snout, huh?
And it didn't seem like a dog man, like from, I guess when I think of it in my mind, that'd be something a bit more, not gangly, but I guess like longer, like have like longer features, like maybe longer legs, or I'm just trying to think of how a wolf body's like. All legs.
Yeah, I like that one because you're kind of going, well, it had the long tail and it is kind of cat-like, but then it has these other attributes. That is a very interesting one because you can't quite put that in a neat little cryptid box.
You can't really classify it because, okay, it could be a cryptid, but yet what was happening at the time, maybe is it something associated with possibly alien or UFO? I mean, is alien big cat? I don't know.
I'm thinking of in Signs where it was the footage from Brazil and Joaquin Phoenix is watching and he has that horror on his face when they finally, they're stopping the video. I'm like imagining that, but just adding like a tail and maybe making them a little bit more stocky. But yeah, I wish. Have you ever had anybody try to sketch it?
I haven't had anybody try to make a sketch or a drawing of it, but that's something, maybe something I can do at some point, or I can try to draw it myself from what I remember.
Yeah, if you could draw at all, I think it'd be worth it to try. If I tried to draw this, it would not be pretty and look nothing like what you saw, I'm sure. So a couple more details. How long would you say the legs were since it was standing up? I mean, if it's 10 feet tall, I'm imagining pretty decently long legs, unless it had a really long torso. And then if you could see any arms, what did they look like?
From what I remember, like the torso was on the long side. Because like I said, it was on its hind legs, kind of punched over. So the legs weren't straight. They were folded a little bit, and the front arms, they weren't like couple little T-Rex arms. They were good sized arms, but not say like what you consider kind of like more human type arms that just go straight down. They had kind of a bend at the elbow, and then I couldn't really make out if it had claws or paws or what, but yeah, it had a longer. The torso was long, so that's why I'm thinking if there's something that was equally at home on its either on its hind legs or it can go on all fours if it needed to.
Did it have a neck?
It had a neck. It wasn't a long neck. It was kind of a I'd call it like a shorter muscular neck.
And then the tail was. This is why you're saying
That's
it's certainly cat-like,
yeah.
because it was quite long. And did it curl at the end?
It was long, and it had like it had like a little, not a little. It was curling up at the end. So that's why I'm like, is this? Like, it looked like a cat tail.
Freaky ass alien cat thing. Yeah, that is so strange. But I love that, because I love the ones where you're kind of like, I don't even know where to begin with this thing. Yeah, if anybody wants to try to draw that and send it along, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the one thing. Like, it just sucks that I was there with my brother and some friends, and I'm the only one that saw it, and they were like right there,
right,
in the same exact area. And just because they were all looking up, and I decided to look over across the street.
Why did you? Do you recall having a feeling to look over there, or something telling you? Not telling you, but you know what I'm saying. Just having a pull to look over there.
If anything, it was just kind of a pull because I just decided to I don't know if I just maybe saw something on my peripheral vision that it's like, okay, what's that? It's tough to really remember just because this stuff 30 plus years ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that considering the fact that you've said a couple times it was a really good show going on up in the sky, and for you to be like, oh, it's a good look over here at the roof you've probably seen for however many years you lived there. So yeah, interesting.
House.
Yeah. Do you kind of wish you wouldn't have seen it? I mean, did that scare you?
I mean, at the time it scared me, but like now it's like there's nothing that I've experienced that I was like, I really wish I didn't see that. So because like nothing that happened to me has been like super negative. Like the scaredest I've been was with that incident, just because it's like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
And I was like 12 years old at the time.
Yeah, and then something subsequently landing on your roof.
Yeah, that was strange too, because the house rattled, the window in the living room was rattling, and like parents and my brother didn't wake up from it. Like we even had dogs, and the dogs didn't react. So yeah, that was just weird. And that when I'm like same exact feeling I had, the night before. I'm like, yep, that's just my cue to go to bed.
So I know that for a fact, it seems that they physically were not looking at the roof, right, when this creature jumped, which would make sense as to why they didn't see it. But what you just said about being in the house and hearing those loud sounds, it even shook the windows and such. Parents didn't react. Brother didn't wake up, or they didn't. None of them woke up. Sorry, let me correct myself. They didn't wake up, and then the no reaction from the pup. So it kind of goes back to what has come up before. Were these experiences tailored just to you? Even if your brother and their friends were looking at that roof at that time, would they have seen it? And subsequently, the noise on the roof, dogs are up, parents are up, brother's up. Would they have even heard that?
I mean, yeah, you bring up a good point. It's like maybe I was the one that saw it, so it's like, okay, I'm gonna give just you specifically a reminder. We're here,
right? Yeah, because I do feel like sometimes these things are tailored to one person who can be oftentimes more sensitive than most around them.
I mean, yeah, I'm a bit like you. I'm within I guess the seeing spirits or anything like that. I'm as dead as a doornail on that regard. Like, so I think it might have been just the case that it could have been any of us, but I was just the one that saw it.
Right.
Possibly.
still, I mean, I know it scared you at the time, but it is a pretty darn cool sighting, to be honest, because it doesn't fit neatly into any one box.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. Like I've never been scared of the paranormal or anything like that, and like all these things just to me it's like solidifies the fact that okay, there's more than what we know. There's more out there,
You,
and I take that as a positive. Got to keep your mind open.
I do have to say though, Jason, I mean, the fact that you saw the triangle UFO and you mentioned a couple times waking up and it kind of being that weird situation where you felt like you had just closed your eyes and pop, they open and it's morning. And then this little creature feature here at the end, I mean, maybe that all is connected. How far apart was the UFO sighting and then this creature on the roof?
Really, not very far at all. Like all three of these experiences I had, like growing up, this was all within a span of maybe 2 years.
Mm.
So I can't give like an exact gap of time, but yeah, between the UFO and this, it was I'd probably say maybe a year at the most.
Well, heck, maybe it wasn't from here. I've had a lot of people on. It seems like once they see a UFO, even if it's way back in the day, sometimes that can open the door for seeing a whole lot of other things.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, once the door is open, you can't shut it.
Of course, I mean, it sounds like you feel the same way as I do. I'm like, well, I'm still waiting. Maybe the door just hasn't been propped open quite enough for me. I don't have a whole lot going on, and I can count on one hand the things I can talk about that are quite remarkable, right? Or truly anomalous. But irregardless of that, these are really interesting stories that you've proposed today, and I do hope that somebody reaches out. If you guys were in Ripon, California, early 90s, take note of that black triangle. And of course, with the last story with this cryptid encounter, my goodness, if anyone has ever seen anything close to that, please get in touch with me, Shannon at intothefrayradio.com or any of the socials. Well, Jason, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your encounters.
No problem, man. I just like to end just saying, like, I know there's probably a lot of people out there that's had like little things happen to them, and they just feel like, hey, I don't want to share it because they feel it's like not good enough. Especially with this day and age, where if you don't have like a big giant, out of this world type story that people think, oh, it's not even worth listening to. Tell the stories, because I think there's a lot of us out there that's had small little encounters that probably in the grand scheme of things, matter.